We as humans have a lot of potential, but it's daunting to even fathom the amount of potential we have for what we can accomplish in this life. I just thought there was going to be like a hi.
No, I don't. I hate doing that stuff. So I'm just like, I get so awkward. So it's just so much better when it's just free flowing.
That is one thing I admire. That's one thing I admire about you and your podcast is that you don't care. I have the opposite problem. I care too much. I'm too much of an over perfection. And now I'm just like not even doing a podcast because it was too much for me.
Really? No,
I mean, I'm doing it, but
yeah, I do care, but I just know that, yeah, I have the perfectionist thing as well. So it's like, how do I remove all these blocks to make sure I will post every single week and then build from there? And one of the blocks is like, I can't do the like, Jordan, welcome to the podcast. This is like some stuff about Jordan. Also, I feel like people just tune out in those intros. It's like, we don't care. Like, let's hear from Jordan himself, what he has to say.
I've had mixed reviews on that. I've asked many people. I've done my podcast in various formats, and different people I talk to prefer different things. So it's hard. It's hard to tell. But yeah, I know. I started recording intros after, so we could just get started, and then later just like say what needs to be said, because then I have some retrospective perspective on what the conversation was about. But anyway, Argentina was great. Thanks for asking. It was during the initial election that was like, no one won because not enough people voted for one single party. So it was like in this interim period where no one knew what was going to happen. And there was some family drama with the politics. And I found a really nice co-working space. And my wife got to be with her family, which is always really nice. The kids got to learn more Spanish and get more comfortable with Spanish, which is important. Should be happening anyway. But yeah, overall, it was a nice trip.
Oh my God, of course, because they elected the crazy libertarian guy, right?
Well, I don't know if he's crazy, but yes, he is a libertarian guy. That's for sure. He's very libertarian.
I mean, he's out there. He has a hairstyle that's out there.
He's got like the charisma of Trump, but I think he knows what he's talking about a lot more than Trump. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or a safe thing. No one knows what's going to happen. There's a lot of projection going around, but he's been in there, 8 days, and he's doing everything he promised. And it's not pretty for a lot of people, but that's also the nature of recovering from economic depression. So,
because he's just like cutting departments. I've seen some of the videos when he's just like, this has to go. This is going.
Yeah, that was his marketing campaign. Now he's actually doing it and deregulating everything, and the price of the peso, he like whatever he did to devalue it like by half overnight. So it was like 350 pesos to $1, and then suddenly it was 800, something like that. So food prices are going up, businesses are being robbed because people can't eat. And then meanwhile, part of the deregulation of the state is like welfare is going to go down because it's been a welfare state for a long time. And that's why they have these economic problems, is because they've just printed money out of thin air for a long time and given it away. And the last party that was in power basically used that to win. Like, hey, we're going to give you money, like we're going to keep the welfare state going. So it's obviously a heated topic, but anyway, he won, he was elected, and that's what he said he was going to do. And now he's doing it. And there's protests in the street. They brought the like paramilitary police force out to like, stop. Because in Argentina, they really protest. They like stop the roads. They have unions there. Like they're pretty into that, which I think is cool. But yeah, that's just what's happening now in Argentina. So we left right before all that.
Huh. And how does your wife's family feel about the whole thing?
Well, my brother-in-law is a fan of Millet, so I don't actually know how he's feeling about it, because it's one thing to vote for something that you read about on paper, or like economics as theory versus economics in practice, right? But everyone else is pretty upset. I mean, you know, your food prices have doubled. It's a place where not everyone has a lot of cash flow anyway. It's a country that's been in hard times for a while. So yeah, it's not pretty, and people are not very happy. I personally see it as like it's just what's necessary to heal in this way, and it's just what's got to be done. Like you can't, like you just have to go through hard times when you've had things be so, I guess, easy. I don't even want to say easy because it's not like it's been easy, but it's like that meme, like weak men create hard times, and then hard times create strong men create good times. We're in that like weak men have created hard times part. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just the natural cycle. I hope, for the sake of all the Argentine people, that he does not become like a dictator. Some people think that's the path. I don't know, but I hope for the best.
Mm. Yeah, I think the world is going to be watching on with interest.
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating. I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but I was just reading a thread on it last night. Like, he was elected the Ecuadorian president, and Colombian as well. They're on the right in that more libertarian sphere. Bukele in El Salvador. I just got back from El Salvador as well. I've been doing a lot of traveling. And there's this movement in the Americas right now to really make like central government smaller, because people are starting to see what it means to have a super strong federal government that's kind of overreaching and doing things with the money supply and whatever. And so there's like, you can see it. There's just a movement, and it goes beyond populism, I think, which is what they would say about Bolsonaro in Brazil or Trump in the United States. Because I think they were like just populists. I don't think they had a really strong like economics backing their ideas, right? But now I think people like Vivek Ramaswamy in the United States, he's running for president, and he's kind of, if he were to be elected, he would be, I think, the equivalent of the Argentine Milei. It's just kind of like, hey, we need to make the federal government smaller. We need to cut out all these avenues for corruption and wasteful spending and make it about the people again. Because governments have just lost sight of the people, and it's just about the politicians making more money for themselves.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like Vivek is just trying to go in for Trump VP, though, isn't he?
I've read that. Yeah, he seems to brown nose Trump a lot. I don't disagree with what he says about Trump. You know, Trump got a bad rep. I mean, I don't like him, but I think Trump got a bad rep. I don't think he was a very bad president at all, and he didn't start any new wars. What American president can say that of the last like 20 years? Like, didn't start any new wars. And at the end of the day, like the United States is a country of war. It's an empire of killing people all around the planet in order to give infrastructure rebuilding loans that keep these countries in debt to the IMF forever. And you know, there's a lot of money in the military industrial complex, and the US is the heart of it. And I don't know if it's possible to save it or change it without it just like crumbling as Rome did. But if there was hope to be had, I would like to imagine. I don't really trust politicians. I mean, Vivek's not really a politician, but I guess he's trying to be. But you know, I like to be optimistic and imagine there's a candidate or two that would actually try to make things better. But who knows? Once they take office, they never seem to do what they promise.
What do you think about RFK? Did we talk about that last time?
No, we didn't. I like RFK for a lot of reasons. I mean, in the same way I like Vivek for a lot of reasons. Like, I don't find myself like left or right. I find myself left and right for different issues. And so for a lot of the reasons I like RFK for the left things, he also has a lot of left things that I don't like that he's into. Same with Vivek. And so with RFK, I find I don't want to say, like, I don't want to be too divisive or polarizing because I know it's controversial right now, but I find the U.S. support of Israel, and just like because it's war, it's the military-industrial complex. I don't mean anything about the Israeli people or the Palestinian people, but like I find it like a very blatant manifestation of the empire supporting Israel. Um, Even though, yes, like Hamas is supported by, all these other countries and they're terrorists. Like I understand all that. But yeah, RFK has a very strong, he's really into Israel. Like, not just like neutral about it. And Millet as well, actually. He seems to have this thing. And so I don't know. Like, I understand the argument for Israel. And like, yeah, I mean, yeah, if terrorists are attacking you, you got to do something about it. But like bombing a whole people to the tune of genocide, which I don't think can really be argued anymore. It's pretty crazy what Israel's doing to Palestine. So like, I don't know. I find it kind of weird that these people can't just be like, yeah, it's fucked up and we need to figure it out because these people shouldn't be dying on either side. These people shouldn't be being killed on either side, you know?
Yeah, well, I guess that is the one thing of, Jared Kushner's work in the Middle East and the peace deals they were doing, and actually like writing a plan for how do you have peace? Like, what is the plan for Gaza? Like, what's the investment required to bring people out of poverty, to stop, because when people are, it's like everyone wants the same thing. Like every human wants the same thing, to like be able to live safely and like educate their children and so on. And like, how do you actually solve that problem? And it seems like they were seriously working on the I mean, obviously people have been working on it forever, but it's like they actually got peace deals done. And that is, yeah, I don't know. It's just this whole different world where everything's so divisive now, and there's not a lot of nuance, and like it's very black and white. And to even say like, actually this person's saying something reasonable, even though there's like all these other problems, it's just like,
Yeah.
It feels scary to be able to to have a conversation about anything. Anyway, so hopefully that gets better, because I feel like the more we can talk to each other and disagree and learn from each other, it's like the better we are. But as soon as we start like not even being able to have a conversation, like that's when you have violence, right? If you can't like solve things through conversation, then like you end up solving things through killing each other, which is not what we want.
Right. And I mean, yeah, it's either communication, talking, or like commerce. Like if goods don't cross borders, armies will. That old saying. So there's different things that can lead to peace, right? But yeah, I spend a lot of time in circles that see us like coming out of like squeezing the darkness out and coming into a new age, right? And we're seeing the last final death throes of these empires and just this darkness where people just want to kill each other and they don't want to just talk. And I guess you can liken it to the patriarchy and just this like very masculine way of going about problem solving, I guess. And so I like to remain hopeful in that realm as well. Like this is so ugly because it's the end of it. It's trying to survive, but it can't. It's like your last push of energy before you're done for. And it's an analogy for just this system that we've had, about 100 years, maybe even less. That's just not sustainable. And I mean, when we talk about violence, yeah, it's a lot more than 100 years. But when we talk about this like uncapped violence because they can keep printing money, that is friggin' crazy. Like, wars were supposed to have end. Wars always had end. Like countries didn't want to keep being at war because it cost money, it cost lives. It was bad not very good for the economy. But when you can just keep printing money to keep the war going, and the whole world economy has to suffer from that, then like there's no incentive for wars to be over. And now we just have proxy wars all over the planet, and so many people are dying, and then we just have these like cheerleaders from this partisan political scene where everyone's like, this is good, no, this is bad, hey, but we need to keep killing people, and Putin's going to take over the world, I'll keep killing people. Like, whoa, like what happened here? Like, why are we supporting war on either side?
I thought RFK though was really like with Ukraine, that he's like, we can't, like, we have to have peace there, and
well, and
we can't
that's the
keep
thing
funding
too.
this war.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there have been, and this is fact, so many times where, like in the beginning, especially, this war did not even have to become a big war. It was just like a skirmish in Donbass in northern Ukraine. And even Zelensky was gonna like sign an agreement with Putin to stop. And like the US wouldn't let them. Like, hey, like he had the neo-Nazi mafia breathing down his throat, and then he has the US breathing down his throat. Like, hey, stay in the war and we'll back you. And that's what's been happening. And it's just freaking crazy. Like, the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died because the US is propping up this war to continue it. It's freaking crazy. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard RFK talk about that. But it's just weird because Zelensky was at Milei in Argentina, his inauguration ceremony. So that was weird, too, because that's another representation of this whole amorphous blob of the corporate military industrial pharmaceutical complex. All of it, you know?
Yeah, I heard you talking about the pharmaceutical complex on one of your podcasts, which is very interesting. But
to say the least.
Yeah. But okay, let's go back to you before we spend the whole time covering all the issues. Do you remember what we talked about in the last episode? Because I just re-listened to the whole thing.
Yeah, we talked about my whole like life story, and I listened to it. I was trying to make social media clips from it, but you know, when you hear yourself and you say, like, you know, right, too many times, and you don't even have a whole story to cut. Like, wow, I got to work on my speaking.
Yeah, it's fun. But I feel like that's how you work on it, when you listen back and then you have awareness of how you speak.
Totally. And I'm always like hosting a podcast, so it's like a different type of speaking, you know?
Yeah. But no, I think you did really well.
Well, thank you. I think we ended off at New Orleans, right?
Yeah. But yeah, and we also have to make sure we cover ayahuasca, because specifically someone who listened to part 1 requested that. And then homesteading as well, which I think was meant to be what we were talking about in the first episode. But before we get there, I want to ask you, going back to your childhood, you have a sister, right?
2. Well, one of them is no longer a woman. So, I mean, I grew up with 2 sisters, yeah.
Younger?
Yes. And
one's transitioned?
No, but they don't identify as a woman.
Okay.
But they are my sibling now.
Okay. And one of them lives in London.
One of them lives in London, but she just arrived here last night for the holidays. So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And so your dad was a pastor, but what did he do after he stopped being a pastor? Because
he was always. Because what?
I just feel like I love your dad, because he told people like his interpretation of Jesus, and they're free to like figure it out themselves. And then everyone was like, get out of the church if you're going to let us have freedom to think for ourselves.
Yeah, they weren't into that, apparently. Some people aren't. He was always a communications professor on the side, so he just became a full-time communications professor.
Okay, cool.
He still is. He loves it. He loves it. So I mean, yeah, he's doing well. He's only done better since not being a pastor.
So teaching people about communication.
Yeah, like critical thinking skills, how to speak publicly, how to write a speech, that kind of thing.
Amazing. And what were the values that your parents instilled in you growing up? Or how did they see the world as well?
We had our family values that we grew up, like we talked about them like once a month. I don't remember any of them. So there was like independence, humor, creativity, and then there were like two or three more that I don't remember right now. But we did have like a specific set of values.
Cool. That your
Yeah,
parents
it
came
was
up
kind of
with.
funny. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, right? It's a good idea. Like we kind of stopped. I don't even remember when I heard it last. It was probably before high school, but like now that I have kids, I think about that and we talk about it. Like, why do we want our kids to grow up valuing, and how do we really put that to the forefront of our lives? And I guess one good way to do it is just talk about it. Hey, these are our values, kids. And yeah, because you can lead by example, you can demonstrate, but I suppose nothing trumps just talking about it.
Wow. So once a month it would be like, okay, we're having our values discussion and you just discuss what
It
they are.
it wasn't so official. It was just like every now and then my dad would come in me and my sister's room with like a sheet of paper, like, "Hey kids, we're gonna go over the values," or like focus on one of them because like maybe we were having a tough time in school with individuality because we thought kids would like judge us, so he would talk to us about like, hey, who cares what anyone else thinks, like you be you, you need to do what you want to do, and that's that. And so kind of like reminders. And now of course they laugh because my siblings and I are all so eccentric, I guess, in our own ways. We're all so different, uh and they're like, wow, maybe we went a little too far with that.
Yeah. I was thinking the first one you said was independent. And
Yeah.
it's like you just went and traveled all around the world and did your own thing. It's like, yeah, they can't be surprised. So
And they're not.
where did both of your parents grow up?
In the suburbs of Los Angeles, yeah, in a place called Burbank, which is where a lot of the movie studios are.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And what did your mom do?
Growing up, I don't know. She was just a.
No, throughout her life.
My mom is a. She's many things. I mean, first and foremost, she's an artist. She's a writer. She creates. Uh, and she was an amazing mother, full-time mother. She's also a singing teacher, a vocal instructor. She could have gone to Broadway. Instead, she chose to have a family. And so she now teaches kids that eventually end up on Broadway. And she's also a creativity advocate. Her main thesis is like creativity is the ultimate everything, the ultimate spirituality. It's like who we are deep down, and it's how we can like reform connection with the world outside, with other people. And yeah, so she went through a spell where she was really into that. And I'm trying to help her become a creator because there's not many people that speak about it like she does. But she's just, she's more on the like retiring end of the spectrum when it comes to conquering life, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just getting started. Like, hey, let's build a brand, mom.
Okay, yeah, okay. I remember you talked about her being an artist and encouraging you to pursue creative things while you're traveling and writing and everything.
Yeah,
That's
my whole
great.
life, it would always be like, Mom, I'm bored. Write a letter, paint a picture, like do something. And we did. And so I grew up, I didn't even You know how we can kind of get into that lifestyle of like watching a movie every night or like putting on the TV? Like, I didn't know what that lifestyle was like until 2017. Like, there were a few series I watched here and there, but otherwise, like, we didn't grow up with a TV. Like, we grew up having to do things. And like, I played the piano, we were busy. I was on the video TV show thing in high school. I played football. Like, we always just grew up doing things. And so it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I started learning the lifestyle that I think many like other Americans or Westerners live, where it's just like we go to work, we do our thing, and then we lay back and we watch something and we enjoy it. And so I these days, like, I get into that routine more often than I want to. But I also, thanks to having built a relationship with, I think, a healthier routine, which is like, don't eat too much at dinner, don't drink alcohol, so you still have some energy at night to do something productive that you enjoy doing. I can tap into that and get stuff done again once the kids go to bed. But especially once you have kids, it's like you kind of want to just watch a movie and tune out.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and then random question. Do you know where your ancestors came from or when they first came to the US?
Yeah, Hungary and Ireland and Sicily, Italy, basically. So I did I had a family member do the whole genealogy report, not a DNA thing, but so my great grandfather was in one of the waves of Eastern European immigrants to the East Coast of the United States, and he met another Hungarian. And I think they went back to Hungary, got married, had their first kid, and then came back to New York and then had my grandpa. That man was very troubled. He was very abusive in many ways to his family. He is not remembered with love. I think we may have talked about this. I did some, how do I say it? Some soul. I went to this church in Portugal where they try to help cleanse the karma of old souls from like the Portuguese and Spanish Empire, killing everyone. And I tried to like connect with my great grandfather. Did we talk about this last time?
No,
I don't want to really repeat myself, but anyway, I did some like spiritual seeking where I tried to help put that guy's soul to rest, because he was a evil man with a lot of problems, and his whole family had to escape him.
What he was like physically abusive.
Yes, and sexually, and alcoholic. Just, I think, kind of like probably a typical Eastern European story of that era. To be honest, I don't think it's that unique. This is just kind of I guess the karma, the blood that runs in our ancestry. Like, things weren't so easy 100 years ago. Life was tough, and I wasn't there, but I imagine for many, many people, just getting by, we have these deep traumas, and we address them in unhealthy ways towards the people around us. So that definitely happened. My grandpa, though, he steered the ship the other way and was a very loving father, and he changed it all for us. So that was that side. That's my dad's side.
And were they religious? Like, is that how was your dad kind of born into a religious family? He found it later.
That side wasn't so religious as compared to my dad's mom. She was Irish Catholic. She was born in New York, but her family came from Ireland during whichever wave of immigrants from Ireland. And she was very devout till her dying day. And so my dad actually grew up going to a Catholic school, and yeah, he hated it. I mean, that growing up in a Catholic school probably guarantees the children to not want to be in religion, at least that religion, as soon as possible, as soon as they can get out.
I went to a Catholic school, but I think Catholicism in Australia is way more chill. It's like, I remember when I was
Yeah.
5, they were like, yeah, you should, Adam and Eve is just a story, like, you should question it, like, you should question the Bible. I was like, this is great. And then I went to the US, I was like, I'm Catholic, and people were like, no, you're not. Like,
no, you're not. My wife grew up in Catholic school as well, down in Argentina, and I mean, it's also a new generation. School back then was different anyway. They could like hit you, you know, they could whip you. Obviously, when we were growing up, they couldn't.
huh. Okay, so it's like
And
he wanted to stay. There was something about faith for him, but he just wanted to get away from the Catholic Church. So that's why he.
no, there was nothing about faith for him. So he was part of this. Well, they're probably still doing it, but it was like a marketing campaign to get people into the new, like, fundamental evangelical non-denominational Christian church, at least in Southern California at the time, where they targeted kids of alcoholic parents, because both my parents had alcoholic parents, and a lot of obvious problems arise from that. And so whatever they did, I don't know, but they targeted people like my parents, and it worked. And so at 16, they re-entered the church. A new church. They became part of this new church, and yeah, they were never Catholic though. Had nothing to do with Catholicism.
Wait, your dad?
And my mom, yeah.
But didn't he go to a Catholic school?
Yeah, he went to well, it wasn't high school. It ended before high school, and then he went to like a regular high school. And so both my parents went to the same regular high school, and then their second or third year or whatever is how they got introduced to the new Christian church.
Huh.
I mean, new to them.
But for him to go and become a pastor, he must have had faith.
You know, you got to look at it. I mean, I don't want to speak for my father here. So, you know, maybe you should have him on your podcast.
Yeah.
But obviously, yes, he had faith. But in my perspective, these days, it's kind of like it's fear-based faith. Like, you got to do this. It's the right thing to do, or else. And you got to do it for your kids, you know, or else. And there's obviously a lot of support when you're part of a church, even if it's just like financial support in times of emergency. So I think there's a lot of factors involved. But yeah, I mean, think about it. They're young, you know, 16 or 17 years old, you get into it. And then by 22, 23, they were pregnant. I mean, yeah, at that stage, you get pretty deep into it. And then you have a family, and everyone like supports you in the family, and there's childcare, and like, you know, before you know it, it's just your life. So I think that was just kind of how it went. And then by the time I was a few years old, he became a pastor.
Interesting. Well, I guess, yeah, if you're in that community and you're a natural leader, it's like you might end up going that direction.
Yeah, plus and he's a natural like student. My dad, I think, always liked to study, you know, so going to seminary and all that was right up his alley. Which is why he's a teacher.
Got it. Okay. So should we go back to New Orleans?
Wherever you want to go, Delia, I will follow.
Yeah. So recap of the first one, it's too hard to recap. You're in France, you're hitchhiking. You end up at a rainbow festival where your heart is opened and you belong. You're in Slovakia doing random stuff. Then
I went to Bulgaria.
Oh yeah, what were you doing with visa situation at this point? Or
Oh,
it's just
I
like,
mean, yeah, it's your typical passport stamp. Yeah.
I guess because you were like in and out of the EU, so you wouldn't have been like overstaying anywhere. Or
I
you
was
were
never in.
what?
Yeah, well, Schengen zone, they give you 6 months. And I think at the time, Bulgaria was outside of the Schengen zone, or at least Serbia was. And so, yeah, I left and I could stay there for as long as they give me, which was probably 3 months. And then I could just go back to Schengen zone. But it was never a problem. This wasn't the span of years. I was
Mm,
never on a extended trip more than like 15 months. So it was never a problem, that kind of thing.
okay.
Um,
Then
though I was always curious what would happen if I overstayed.
huh. Okay. And then you end up in San Fran. You do like a hero's dose of mushrooms. You experience like death. And then you go to New Orleans.
And then I go to New Orleans and everything. uh, yeah. So I was in like this kind of mushroom spiritual phase that I think people go through around that age. And my buddy was like, "Hey, I need to drive across the country. Like, do you want to come?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" So a girlfriend of mine came along, and we make it to Austin, Texas when he's like, "Yo, I gotta go. I can't finish the trip because my girlfriend is going through something up in Chicago." So he just left us in Austin and he jetted up to Chicago. And so we were like, "Okay, what are we going to do here?" So we're couch surfing at this guy who's a veteran of the Second Iraq War, couch surfing in his new apartment. He's got all this nice stuff, and we help him like set up the IKEA furniture. And then on New Year's Eve, we all go out to downtown Austin. We meet like his, I don't know, complicated girlfriend type. And the next morning, there's other couch surfers too. So there's like 4 couch surfers in this like barren apartment. And like the next morning, we wake up, we have breakfast, we're like hanging out. We're kind of like waiting for the host guy to like come out of his room. We're like, "Man, like, what's he doing in there?" And we're like, "Oh, well, I guess he just doesn't want to see us. So let's just go and we'll come back later and we'll see him later." So we go out, we see more of Austin. We come back and there's all these cop cars. We come back super stoned. We smoke a joint somewhere and we come back and there's all these cop cars and an ambulance like in the apartment complex parking lot. And suddenly, intuitively, I knew this is for us. Like it suddenly everything made sense as soon as we saw everything. And yeah, our couch surfing host had committed suicide
Oh my
while
God.
we were in the living room and he was in his room. And they wouldn't tell us how, they wouldn't tell us what, but in the like 2 days we had gotten to know him. Like I said, it just made sense. Like everything kind of clicked. And yeah, it was
He,
really sad. It was really
he was like
intense.
traumatized by the war.
I would imagine that's a big part of it. Yeah. I mean, I think if you find the statistic of suicides from people that were a part of that war, whether that was while they were there or once they came back, it's an insane number. It's like more than the actual deaths, casualties of the war. There's like more suicides.
Wow.
Yeah, how's that for the military industrial complex? It's like it's just killing people everywhere, whether it's like in straight up a war zone or in your mental trauma from it. Like it's freaking crazy. So it was really sad and really intense for us. So we rented a car and got the fuck out of there. And by the way, the police were super cool because we were like, "What do you think the police are going to blame us?" And so we met the police and they're asking us, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you just travel around and stay on people's couches?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "And you do this? You've done this before?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've done it all over the world." And the police was like, "What?" They were like super like they kept asking me questions. it was really cool. But
Was this
yes,
like from a couch surfing website?
yeah, it's couchsurfing.org. The community isn't what it used to be. this was like the golden era still, or this was the end of the golden era before Airbnb came in and fucked everything up. So the golden era, in my experience, was between 2007 and 2014 or so.
Yeah, my friend who's been on the podcast, actually in that tweet where someone was like, how do people just travel the world? I don't get it. Like, do they have money? What are they doing? And I was like, listen to this episode with Jordan and it will explain it for you. And I was like, and this episode with Jono, who's also done it. He met his wife couch surfing, which is pretty funny. Like, he couch surfed a lot and then he opened his place for people to do it.
That's so beautiful.
It must be like such a high trust thing because you're just like, okay, these randoms, like, hope they don't steal my laptop. Like,
I mean, the worst experience I ever had was waking up in the middle of the night and my guest, because I was hosting, she was giving me a hand job. That was the most uncomfortable experience I had. And I guess you could say she thought she had my consent, but it wasn't something I was wanting at the moment. And like, I had to make it clear to her, like, hey, like, you got to leave. Like, this is not okay. That was the most uncomfortable experience I had.
In the middle of the night, you kicked her out?
No. I just said, like, get out of my bed. Like, you're not this, that. And then I went to work the next day and she wasn't there when I got back. So fortunately, it didn't have to get weird. But I do know people that had, some difficulty sometimes, because there are, socially awkward or mentally ill people that, like, they don't get it when you're like, hey, it's time to go. And they just like, what do you mean? Everyone loves me.
So do you agree initially how long people can stay?
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I've done both a lot. In fact, every time I had roommates, they would all be mad. Anytime I lived somewhere for a period of time, they would eventually all get sick of me because I was always just hosting couch surfers and it would just be a big party all the time. But the best way to do it is be like, hey, yeah, I'm stopping through. If I could stay for like 2 or 3 nights, like, that'd be awesome, and see what happens. And then that's like where okay, cool, we agreed on like 2 or 3 nights. But then you get to know each other and see how it goes. And I'm comfortable, they're comfortable. Sometimes I ended up staying 2 months, from an invitation of 2 or 3 days. Yeah, it all just depends on how you connect and the situation.
And you like hosting people because you're like, oh, I'm going to meet some cool people who are traveling through.
Yeah. Or get laid. I've made some of the best friends of my life, and I've had some great romances from it. And most importantly, you're meeting someone that lives in the city, or wherever you are, you're meeting someone that lives there, so they can show you around. They can do the fun stuff with you. It's the best way to get to know a new place, with people that live there. And then you meet their friends and you go to their parties. Like, it's really the best way to travel.
Wow. So it's like a hookup thing as well. But it has to...
unofficially. Yeah.
But hopefully there's like proper boundaries and stuff so people aren't just being taken advantage of.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, it's analogous to life, where you kind of have to, learn how to interact with people the right way, just in this medium. You have to know how to communicate. You have to know how to make your profile to show who you are. I mean, a lot of women's profiles, they don't allow men, for example. But I had like over 100 references. So I could go anywhere with anyone. Everyone would always accept me because I was an ambassador in the program. Like, I have all these references. Everyone loves me. So like, most women would feel safe with me, right? I was in India once, and I actually met a girl on Tinder, and we were chatting, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm couch surfing at this guy's house, and I don't like it here at all. And she's like, oh, you're on couch surfing? Can you send me your profile? I send her my profile, and thanks to my couch surfing profile, she agreed to like go on a date with me, and I ended up staying with her for a while. And we had this whole, romance while I stayed with her. Huh. That was all thanks to my couch surfing profile.
Okay, but would you have friendships with women as well, where it's like, yeah, it doesn't have to go anywhere?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that was most of them. Of course.
Okay, so it's not like the assumption is It has to
No,
be.
no, 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 no. But I think sometimes people do make that assumption, and that's where weird situations arise on both sides. I know men that make that assumption and then they get weird. But I stayed with a woman in Bulgaria once, and she was so beautiful. I wish I had been more in my element. But like we she was like she had never done couch surfing before. Anyway, by the time I left and like we had gone out with her friends and they were a bit drunk and her friend was like, "So this is where you two go hook up now?" Like or something like that. Are you supposed to kiss because you're staying with her? She said something weird and then the girl I was staying with, she kind of reacted like, "No, shut up," like that's not what it's about. And there was just this weird vibe. And then I thought later, like, oh, wait a minute. Because she had invited me. I didn't even like send her a message. I had
Huh.
put out a post saying, hey, I'm going to be here for these days. I'm looking for a place. And then people can just invite you. And so she just invited me. And I just feel this beautiful woman's inviting me. She's new to the program, but like, hey, yeah, I'll go to your house and sleep on your couch. Sure. And yeah, I mean, nothing ever happened. We just became friends. But by the end, I realized, actually, wait, I think she was thinking we would hook up. So,
Okay, sorry. So back to that situation with that poor man in Austin.
yeah. Yeah. So we left. We left Austin and we couch surfed at this other guy's place in New Orleans. We ended up going to New Orleans. We'd never been there. We wanted to see it. And we were going to go to like Florida, to the Florida Keys. Our goal was to like just go all the way. But New Orleans, it was the beginning of Mardi Gras season. And we just got stuck. It was too amazing. New Orleans is a magical place, especially during Mardi Gras season. And if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Nothing I could say to explain or describe it will help you like feel that magic. But I'm a musician, and music just bleeds up from the streets, from the sidewalks there. Like it's just like the musical energy is everywhere and you're inspired and there's art everywhere. There's artists everywhere. It had just gone through Hurricane Katrina. So there was this, I guess, humbling by the elements that happens. And it kind of reflects in the culture a bit, even though it was starting to get gentrified, but I didn't know that yet. So we stayed with this guy, we couch surfed. The girl I was with, my friend, even though it was kind of romantic, she ended up sleeping with that guy the whole time. And that was that. And we just partied. I don't know how else to say it. We just partied, but it's such wholesome partying in New Orleans. I don't know how else to explain it. There's wholesome partying.
I did not have very wholesome partying there, but
was it during Mardi Gras? Was it during Mardi Gras?
No, it wasn't.
There you go.
Go back during Mardi Gras one time.
Because there's all this community and like everyone in their floats and their parades and like there's so many of them, and then you're just on the street or you're in someone's apartment and everyone just is sharing the experience together and everyone is just enjoying themselves. For me it's a very wholesome party experience. I really like it and I really liked it. So we ended up staying there. Like she ended up leaving with a different guy she met because she needed to get back to her family or something. And then I stayed like 2 months. I stayed on that guy's floor for a while. And then finally he was like, hey, man, I'm ready for some space. I know you're doing your thing, but I just need to have space now. I'm like, okay, cool, man. And so I stayed with some girl I met. And then I stayed at some different couch surfers' place. And I wanted to stay in the town because I was like starting a band and playing music all the time. And I was just happy. So I wanted to stick around, but I couldn't figure out a comfortable living situation. So I eventually left. I went back to Austin. I stayed with a different girl I had met the time before. We had been spending time with her prior to finding out about the suicide. So I ended up staying with her and her 2-year-old daughter for a couple months. And I did some what do you call it? Street vending, I guess. Not even that, but I found a gig on Craigslist because South by Southwest, the music festival, was going on. and this tea company needed people to go around and give samples, free samples. So I would just walk around Austin all day giving people free tea. I could talk to whoever I wanted, like approach any woman I wanted, like, hey, you want some tea? Hey. And then ended up going to a bunch of parties, and like it went from the New Orleans party scene to the South by Southwest party scene, which was almost equally intense, a bit less wholesome feeling. Definitely some stories there. But eventually I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. And I went and I met my brother, my dad, and my sister in Vegas. Here I was trying to escape the partying, and I meet them in Vegas during like March Madness, the basketball tournament. And I was just on a streak. Like this was like the most debaucherous time of my life. Like I had been pretty debaucherous in Thailand. I think we covered that last time, but this was just like all on another level. And it was just like almost spiraling out of control. And this was after I had started this like spiritual awakening from mushrooms. So it felt wrong for the first time. It felt like I was going backwards.
And did you feel lost again? Of like what direction you were going in your life?
Yeah. Well, my inner compass is always like, just go with the flow as long as it feels good. But there comes a point when you're drinking that much alcohol all the time that you don't really know it feels good anymore. You're just kind of telling yourself, or you become physically dependent. You get the shakes by the early afternoon if you haven't had a drink. And then, you're drunk again by the mid-afternoon. And I was just like I was really in it. And yeah, I actually have to thank my mom for snapping me out of it, because I came back home to visit after that, and she was like crying. She's like, Jordan, do you ever stop to think, and she regrets this, I believe, after. She doesn't think it's her business. Like, she believes in supporting with love, like, subtly, not just like being, hey, I recognize this. Like, why don't you take a look at it yourself? Because that just builds resistance, right? When you try to tell someone what's good for them, like no one wants to hear that. Fortunately, we have a good relationship. So I took her seriously and I listened to her, and we were both crying, and like, I was like, yeah, mom, but like, I'm just happy this way. Cause like, from her perspective, she's hearing about me living on the streets in New Orleans, like, drinking, like full on bum status, right? Like living on couches. She's like, don't you want to like, move your life forward in some kind of way? So anyway, she encouraged me. She wanted me to go do a yoga teacher training, because I had always been really into yoga, but I'd never really taken it seriously. So she was like, I'll pay for you to go do it. Just go somewhere like, South America or whatever. And I was like, no, mom, I don't want you to pay thousands of dollars for something that I don't even agree with. I don't really believe in certification processes. I think they're kind of silly. But anyway, I listened, I took her advice. I said, she's right. I need to clean up. So I went down to Mexico, to southern Mexico. I found a volunteer work exchange situation at a holistic healing retreat center right on the beach in this peaceful little surf town. And I show up, and it's all just, a bunch of white people living in like a mansion in like a really poor Mexican village. And I'm the only one that speaks Spanish. None of these people speak Spanish. And my Spanish at the time was not very good. So it was kind of funny. But I remember after a few weeks, like, the locals would know that I spoke Spanish, and they'd just ask me, like, what do you guys do there? Like, what's going on? They've been there like a year, but like, what do you do there? No one knew what these gringos in the mansion, like, were spending their time doing. And what we were doing was a lot of meditation, yoga, juicing, vegan diets. The owner of the place essentially was trying to develop protocols for healing and have a place where people could come to just be away from it all and just heal whatever it was. Just have some peace, eat right, be around good people, good vibes. But he brought a lot of his own past trauma and whatever karma to the whole situation, which is probably how I ended up there. We weren't supposed to drink. We weren't supposed to we were supposed to be these like model new age citizens, and obviously when you're supposed to be something, you don't want to do it. And I didn't get kicked out. I followed the rules. I never drank inside the place, but I drank in town, and I did kept the party going. But I was also introduced to new methods of exploring myself and subtle energies of life through breathing, through breath, through other people, through sex. And yeah, it was really powerful. I learned a lot. I had a couple really strong mentors or two in that realm. A girl followed me from New Orleans, a girl I had met in the last days on Tinder or whatever, and we had just had like kind of like a one night stand. It was nice, but I guess she thought it was something more. And I told her, yeah, I'm going down to this place. And she's like, oh, well, would you mind if I applied to go do it too? I was like, sure, why not? And she basically told them, I guess she told them that like we were like close or something, and they weren't planning to accept any more volunteers, but because she kept talking about me and they had already accepted me, they decided to accept her, which turned out to be a disaster later on.
What? Because she was really into you?
Yeah, and I wasn't there to be into anyone. I mean, I was there to work on myself, but I was also, trying to be young and free with the ladies.
So it was like if you helped out at that place, you would get to stay there and get food and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So we give whatever 5 hours a day, and we get to stay for free. I mean, we're sharing rooms, and yeah, we get to eat the vegan food and all that for free.
How did you have money otherwise, like to buy booze or whatever?
Well, because it's Mexico, so you don't need that much money, but a few different ways. Like I've always been good at just kind of like attracting small little gigs here and there, like doing websites or videos or whatever. Like that's how I always got by, was just random video jobs for like, a couple $100 or something. Like I probably could have charged a lot more had I cared, but for me, like all I need was a few $100s at any time and I could make it work. And then I met someone there too who paid me a few $100s to help him do some things. So my tech skills have always helped me get through and help me build opportunities.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean you learned stuff through sex, as in tantra or whatever?
Yeah, tantra, just those body energies and how to play with them and how they can be amplified when you're with another person naked.
And this was like on the curriculum. I love how the first episode you're like, am I allowed to swear? And then this one you're just like, start talking about suicide, start talking about someone giving a hand job, like no warning.
Well, I'm not swearing.
Okay, got it.
This wasn't part of the protocol. No, the protocols were all like parasite cleanses, heavy metal toxin cleanses, enemas, juicing, fasts, all that boring stuff. I, at that stage, was envisioning one day I could start some kind of a similar retreat center, but with like psychedelics, like more shamanistic. Mm-hmm. Because I was recognizing the power in that, and they were helping me like heal physically, and I didn't even know it, but I was recognizing that just these new thought patterns, I guess the playing with your neuroplasticity, the mind is so powerful, mind over matter. I was recognizing that my body was like not going through some of the same afflictions it had before, just from, I don't know, just developing myself as a human. So I was like, wow, this could be something to explore. But the guys there were like, no psychedelics, no smoking weed, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so I would always have to go to the beach every day to smoke weed, because I always smoke weed before yoga, obviously. And I would go to the beach, and it was fun. I would actually go naked in the beach because there's never anyone around. And then I'd come back, and then we would do our morning meditation thing. And then they started teaching us holotropic breath work, which like the Osho meditations, where you're like for like 40 minutes, and then you're dancing, getting cathartic, and it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
It's powerful. It opens you up in ways you don't even realize are possible. So it brings you to a new level of awareness, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like psychedelic. It's like a psychedelic experience, or at least that's how I've experienced it.
So me and this one guy who became kind of like my mentor, Shaba Khan. Shout out to Shaba Khan, brother. He was really into the chakras, and he's a guy from Florida, from the South, but he's a body worker, massage therapist, and into tantra, and really full of love. Really, and he was one of the first guys I'd ever met that was just really in touch with his feminine side, but still a man, you know. And I guess you could say he taught me just like how the chakras work. It sounds so cliche, but I never really looked into it before. And a lot of it made a lot of sense. And then when we started working on the breathing, which we all did as a group, you go through the chakras, and you can start to feel them like getting activated, and then it carries on into real life, supposedly, where you start to whatever that energy represents, whether it's like love or like hard work or money, sex, even, like you start to kind of attract that stuff around you as you work on that inside those physical domains. Like for example, I always had issues I would always have times where like I'd be really upset with someone but too scared to tell them, and it would like manifest as a lump in my throat, and I would be like unable to tell, and then finally I would like recognize there's no other path forward, I have to talk to them, and like immediately the lump would go down. And so I had experienced things like this in my life, even in my back, and in those days I was realizing like, wait a minute, like, so if I work on these things through meditation, I can avoid these situations happening in real life. Because for me at the time, it was like a negative thing. I would attract pain, or I would create pain in my back or in my neck and in my throat, whatever. And so I could start to see like, oh, they correlate with chakra stuff. But if I work on it through meditation, maybe I can avoid that. So that's how I saw it back then. And anyway, at this holistic healing place, we weren't supposed to have coffee, and we weren't supposed to smoke weed. And obviously, you know, we all drink coffee. The volunteers, I mean, the people are there to heal. They were like ready to like sacrifice everything, but we're like, we want coffee, you know, and plus coffee, like caffeine. Cheers. Caffeine sometimes just gives you that inspiration you need to feel like something's possible, like that there's hope. So there's that perspective on caffeine that wasn't being addressed, in my opinion. But no, can't have coffee. But we could do coffee enemas. So there was coffee in the house. And I love coffee enemas. I still do them. It's a great way to get caffeine. But at the time, we would get up an extra early. Me and my chakra guy mentor would get up extra early and make coffee. But it was like the fresh coffee beans, right? Like from the jungle. So we'd have to roast them, and then we'd have to grind them and then make the coffee. And so the whole house was smelling like beautiful, delicious roasted coffee by meditation time. And we're like, oh, what? No one's drinking coffee. And so we'd drink coffee, and then we'd go up on the roof and smoke a joint, because that's what you do before we do this breathwork meditation. And one day the owner found a roach from a joint, and he wanted it to be me. Like and I never did. I never smoked at the place. I stood with the other guy while he smoked. I drank the coffee, but I never smoked. I always would go out to smoke because I follow the rules. And there was this big long thing. They called a meeting, like, we found a joint, you know, what is this? And he looked straight at me like, tell me the truth. Have you been smoking here? And I look at him and I'm like, no, because he knew I was into it, and I was triggering him the whole time. I was triggering this guy like I was his son or something. He was here to start this pure journey, like a place where everyone can be pure and there's no drugs and we think beautiful. And this was all shit he couldn't do on his own. So he was trying to create a spot and like outsource the responsibility, and then people like me come in and fuck it up, right? And he's the victim here. And he was like, tell me the truth. And I was like, no. And I was like, like, why are you coming after me, man? And then finally the chakra guy was like, that was me. I've been smoking joints all the time. And he was like blown away because that guy is the massage therapist, the energy guy that's so perfect. Like, he couldn't be the guy. So that's just one example of all the drama we went through at that place. It was not a very healthy time, but I learned a lot. And I eventually left because the girl I was in love with left. She was the girl from Adelaide who your accent reminds me of. I was totally in love with her. I met her there. She was couch surfing. They put me in charge of this holistic healing place because the guy had to go to Europe. So they put me in charge. And I basically just had a harem of women volunteers. I think there was one Argentine guy there. And we turned that place around. It was very, very, very different. And it was not what the guy wanted. But it was attracting more youthful and fun energy. But yeah, so I got out of there. I went to the other side of Mexico with my accordion. I got into a gypsy jazz band, made me feel like New Orleans again. It felt really good. I ended up staying there for a couple months with a woman I met on couch surfing and her two daughters. And she ended up being, well, by the time I was leaving, she was telling me she had my child and I wasn't allowed to see him or it ever because I was an asshole or something. So I went back to California after 6 months in Mexico, like heartbroken.
Wait, was that
Because,
true?
well, to this day, I don't know for a fact, but it became pretty obvious. I was drinking some beers with some friends from high school around the fire. After like 2 months of like going through a lot of stress, like, oh my God, I might be a father, but she's not going to let me see the child. What do I do? Do I go live in that city? And I told her, like, I'll come be the father, but I'm not going to be in a relationship with you because at that point she had proven to me she was, kind of crazy. But I was like, I'm not going to let a child be raised without a father, not if I have anything to do with it. So she's like, no, I'm going somewhere else and you can never see him. You'll never be able to see my child, blah, blah, blah. And then meanwhile, the chakra guy was like, tune in psychically. Like, you'll know if you've made a child, like you've got that connection with them. Like, you can tune into it. And I couldn't. I was like, I really can't tune into it. And looking back, it just feels like bullshit. I don't know if I could. I was always with my wife now when she was pregnant. So like, you don't need to psychically tune into it. You're just there for it. But at the time, yeah, I couldn't tune into it. And then finally my friends were like, she's lying, dude. Like, and then she blocked me, on social media and on email. So I couldn't even communicate with her. They're like, yo, she's lying. You're offering to go be there. You're offering to send money. You're offering all this stuff. And she's saying no. She wants to just manipulate you, like emotionally, because you left. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it would have been a Christmas time miracle if she had gotten pregnant because our sexual activity was not that engaged.
Oh, so you didn't even know if she was pregnant?
She wasn't. It was nothing. Yeah. It
Got
was
it.
all a lie.
Got it. So it wasn't like she had a baby, but it's like you didn't know if she was the father. It's just that like she wasn't even pregnant.
If she was pregnant, the other thing about it is that I was all into my polyamory and stuff at the time. And she had this guy she was kind of dating off and on. And I met him a couple times and, blah, 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 blah. And I thought that too. I was like, wait a minute. What if it's his baby? And she's using it as an excuse to like, I don't know, punish me for leaving. So I don't know. But at the end of the day, I had to just like let go of it because if it's true and like, what can I do about it? I can do absolutely nothing. And, I mean, yeah, but also, like I said, I'm more responsible than that, in the bedroom. Like, I know what I'm doing. And it would, like I said, it would have been a miracle if that happened. So
what part? I'm just thinking like, just everyone's got to tune back in for part 1 where we hear all about how you were like came to France as like this celibate, like abstinent person. And this version chapter is very different. Okay, anyway, so which part of Mexico was the retreat place?
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because this is what happens when you restrict young people from being themselves. They go off the fucking deep end after. When you don't let them drink, you don't let them do drugs, you don't let them have sex, you don't let them be themselves when they're growing up, they're gonna do it in a dangerous setting later. They're not gonna they're gonna lose control. Like, and I'm a pretty responsible guy, you know? Like, I lost control and, you know, I'm okay. Some people lose control and they're not okay. I never got into heroin or cocaine and stuff, you know, but like some people do and some people don't make it through. And it's very sad and it's not good. But this is what happens when you raise children, especially like teenagers, in environments where they're not allowed to do anything. They're eventually going to get to this stage where...
So at what point do you feel like you lost control?
Oh, well, I mean, with enough alcohol, you will lose control. This was around then. Like I said, after coming back to the States. I mean, I lost control in Thailand, I would say, but I was still young enough to where, like, it was okay. I don't know. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but, I get it. When it's like you're going out, you're drinking a lot, but everyone is, like, your party, you know, it's like blurred lines between, are we just having fun and someone drank too much and ended up passed out, versus when you're a bit older and it's like, why is that dude like getting passing out every single night and like not even drinking, or it's like
So that was I was probably 25 around that point, and I was recognized, like, whether I had lost control with, like, I mean, I've never been most of the people I ever, like, slept with and have been sexual with is because, like, there was a bit of a connection. Like, I think I could tell you, like, on 2 or 3 fingers how many one-night stands I've had just for sex sake, right? And they've always been, like, not fun. I never liked them. I liked to, like, feel a connection with someone. Even if it was only for a night, I liked to get to know them. You know, and maybe it was a few nights after getting to know them and it only happened once. But, like, it was a brief phase of my life, and it was probably in Thailand, where it was like anyone goes. Like, I'll put my dick in anyone, like anything, because that's just like where I'm at right now. That, I would say, is like losing control. I didn't like that. It never worked for me. So I, like, lost control with, like, alcohol. And then while I was in Mexico, I was learning about using all these energies, these bodily energies, and I was doing all this trippy breath work. And then I would suddenly just, like, get super drunk. So I'd be like, what do they call it? Like a tuning fork, or like I was very receptive to things. And I was also putting out a lot of things. And then when you add alcohol, it just, like, makes it, like, blurs everything. It fucks it up, because alcohol is this drug. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it distracts you. It, like, takes you away from truth. It takes you away from who you are. The more you drink, like, you have a few drinks and you can, like, maybe be more who you are because you feel more lubricated. And, you know, I think that's why we like it socially. But when you keep going because you're depressed or you got something else deeper going on that you're hiding from, which is what I was doing, then, especially when you're more receptive to these energies about you and you're on this, like, path of self-development, then the alcohol throws you, like, against the wall and fucks you up a lot harder than I think it does if you're just going through life on autopilot. I think why it's so attractive to just go through life on autopilot, because you don't have to think too much about what's happening. Like, oh yeah, I'm drinking. Oh, hey, I'm not drinking.
And so what were you hiding from yourself?
That's a good question. One could also argue that all my traveling was also to hide. You know, what am I running from? And I've recognized the answer to that in recent years, trying to buckle down and just start a life and start a home with my family. I think I have a lot of potential. I think we all have a lot of potential, but I'll say it in I think I have a lot of potential that I'm going to say we, because I think it's better that way. I think we as humans have a lot of potential, but it's daunting to even fathom the amount of potential we have for what we can accomplish in this life. And I believe that's why the powers that be, the amorphous blob that wants to swallow up everything and keep everyone to be a robot that puts all its energy into systems that keep feeding it, go into your 9 to 5, lose your soul, drink alcohol at night. All of this is to distract us and disconnect us from our true potential, which ultimately is we are gods in carbon bodies. Like, we create reality around us with focus and intention. And we build things, and whether it happens in a day or happens in years, like, we can build the life we want for ourselves. We just can. And we prove it all the time. But there is an aspect of comfort that the modern world, and an aspect of lacking comfort that up until the modern world, keeps us distracted. Like, oh, I gotta pay the bills. I gotta go to work. I got health things. I got this. I got that. Where we don't have the energy or the mental capacity, the space to really consider the potential of who we are. So when you toss all that aside, which is what I did, I don't want to care about money. I don't want to care about jobs, career, future. I'm just going to travel. Then you have more time and space to really start considering that potential. But when you're too immature, as I was, to start actually addressing it, which shout out to all my friends that decided to become entrepreneurs at that age. Like, I have friends from high school that they did the job thing and they realized, like, I don't want to do this. They didn't just quit everything to travel. I mean, they did do a lot of traveling, but they started their own businesses. And then what happens when you start your own business, you become an entrepreneur, is you recognize all the things that need to be done. No one's telling you what to do. You have to do it yourself. So you have no choice but to develop the mindsets of focus, of commitment, of just dedicating yourself to something, and all the side quests that come up along the way. You have to work on yourself as a person, or else you will not find that success. And yes, sure, some people have it. They grew up those skills, like their parents taught it to them, or they're naturally like good at that, whatever. But I had a lot of work to do on myself to actualize that potential. And I think subconsciously, intuitively, I always knew about that potential. I'd always felt it. I had been working towards that back in college and stuff. And then it just got too hard. It just felt like too much. I thought I'd rather just keep not caring, which is what you kind of need to do to start heading towards that potential. But I don't want to head towards the potential. I just want to not care. So I got caught on this state of apathy, almost like nihilism towards my own life, which ultimately just it's almost more dangerous than just having a 9 to 5. Maybe not. I go through this a lot lately because, like, I'm still financially very like not, not as sovereign financially as I will be soon, because I've had to develop all these things. I never cared about money. I never did savings. I got lucky with learning about Bitcoin early, which has got me here as far as like on a material level, but it's not because of anything I've done. Like, I never had a job for 10 years to have enough savings to invest in stocks and real estate and do this and that. No, I never did that. I chose to live life. And getting back at it, I chose to hide in this space between growth and being a slave. I didn't want to be a slave, but I didn't want to grow. So I drank. And that's where I got lost. And that's why if I were to ever like mentor young people in a similar position, I'd say, like, once you feel that temptation to just like, yeah, I'm not going to be a slave. I'm going to be sovereign over myself. But that's just a lot of work. Like, there's got to be a middle ground. you have to keep growing. We have to. Like, this is who we are as humans. And once we're on that journey, you can't stop it. And if I hearken back to what I was learning in those breathwork meditations and the chakras and all that, is that you're releasing energy when you're doing that. You're releasing stuck energy inside of you. And how that's going to come out might be different. But ultimately, what it leads to is growth, because there's going to be tricky situations, thoughts, emotions that come out that have been deep inside. You might cry, you might scream, you might have all this anger that's just repressed because we're never given the opportunity to express these things in our society. Like, it's not okay to have really, really intense emotions. Like, it's not okay. Oh, you need to go to therapy.
Yeah. Especially for men, it's interesting that it's like you can't be vulnerable emotionally, but also you can't be like excited, or like if a man is like super like jumping up and down, it's also like, oh, it's like just you're just meant to be kind of like calm and stoic all the time.
At least that's what we think. I've found that once your heart is open and like you really feel good about things, then I can jump up and down, and it is contagious. And the only thing that holds me back from being like my inner child more in life is my own insecurities or self-limiting beliefs. Like, oh, people don't want that. People don't, people are gonna, that might make someone uncomfortable. Like, thanks to my parents, I got over the, what will they think of me? I got over that. And then I was like, well, I don't want to make people uncomfortable by being too happy. And now it's like it's good for the universe for me to be happy. It's good for the world. Like, if more of us were happy, the world would be happier. And happiness, smiles are contagious. It's like, why would we hide our happiness from others? So all of this is a roundabout way of saying, and I didn't really connect the dots on what I was trying to say about the breath work and the progress and entrepreneur stuff. But like, essentially, as humans, we always got to keep growing. Once we're aware enough to make that decision to like go on that journey, we have to keep growing. And if we don't, we're going to have a hard time. So they call it like the Kundalini awakening when you're doing that chakra stuff. And if you go on Reddit, you can Google this. It's kind of esoteric. I apologize. I don't want to be too new agey woo woo, but it is really interesting actually. And it's a good metaphor, because they say, this is some ancient lore here, but it's like your Kundalini is your spine. It's like a snake. It means snake in Sanskrit. And the Kundalini is a type of yoga where you're focusing essentially on those chakras. There's 7 chakras. They're different points in your body, and they each represent a different field of energy that we operate in life, whether that's relationships, with ideas, with sex or food, energy, like to exercise, things like this. So the Kundalini awakening means, and this often happens through these meditations that I was talking about, these holotropic breathwork things, is you activate each of these chakras, all these energy centers, to where suddenly, like, you're pure. I don't even know what to call it. Like imagine you as a person is like, you're a cycle of energy, but in our normal modern day lifestyle, it doesn't move. It's stuck because we sit too much, or we have these energy centers are kind of blocked because we don't nurture them in the ways they generally need to be nurtured. So once you nurture them and you open them, then that cycle can start to move. And imagine it just starts glowing and glowing, and you have all this energy. And I had all this energy for the first time I never had, which is why I was explaining then when you have all this energy and you start drinking, it really affects you more than if you didn't do all that breath work, Kundalini awakening stuff, and you're just drinking. It doesn't affect you as much. But when you do have that going, it requires full commitment. Nothing can get in the way. It requires priority. Doesn't matter how much money you need to make. It doesn't matter if you need to travel. It needs to develop itself. And so it's a blessing and a curse, because it is the only way forward at a certain point, yet it requires so much energy, attention, focus that it gets in the way. And I wasn't ready to give it that. I didn't have anyone telling me how this worked. Normally, you have a guru or whatever that guides you through these things. I didn't have that. I had mentors kind of explaining how things work, but no one saying like, hey, Jordan, only do this if you're ready. So there I was in Mexico doing this, and I wasn't ready. My ego wasn't ready. I used that energy to sleep with more girls. I used that, and it ended up with someone telling me they have my child, making my life a living hell for 2 months, lying to me, etc. I created that because I had all this new prana, this new energy, life force flowing through me from those meditations that once I started introducing alcohol again and Adderall, because I was writing this science fiction book while I was at her house, it was a shit show. And look what happened. Accusation of making a child. So once that Kundalini awakening thing, I hate talking about this publicly because I feel like it's just too far. It's too fringe for most audiences. And I don't even like talk about this I don't talk about this in my normal life. I don't even think about this anymore, but this is what I thought about back then.
Yeah.
At least in the years that followed when I was starting to recognize what was happening. But it requires, and like now I'm there. Like the journey started, and there's ultra sensitivities that come. Like it's rough. It's really rough. But when you're aware of it happening, you recognize that this is just the journey. This is just the process, and it's going to end. I mean, there's always going to be a new one, but this is just how life is. And so it's this metaphor that once we decide to take this path, we have to keep progressing. And if we don't, we're going to have a tough time, and it's going to make things almost worse than if we hadn't decided to take this path of self-development. And that's what I'm attributing to the alcohol here. The alcohol was easy before I was on that path of self-development. Once I decided to go on that path of self-development, alcohol became 100 times more dangerous.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of feels like for me that it's like there was, I don't know, before I experienced depression, it was like I was just like kind of going through life. I don't know, like I guess I wasn't really conscious, like fine, like everything's fine. Drinking, like whatever, just being a normal person, like working in like doing the normal stuff. But now it's like I can't do like all these kind of coping or these mechanisms that you can use to like suppress stuff. It's like I've kind of like stripped all this stuff away. So it's like there's no choice but for me to do this path, even though I'm like, it's annoying. Like I wish I could just do the easy thing and do like a normal job. It's like in finance, it's like you can just work in a job and like make money and just be a normal and people around me just want me to be like this normal fucking person who doesn't just make these random decisions. But it is almost like I have to like keep following this path now that I've like started on it or something. So I don't know what you're saying, it resonates with me.
This is all part of in 2019 I was trying to start making content about this. A lot of it had to do with like how to start traveling and living the way I lived, because I thought that was like the key to really like taking this path, because you have to kind of be free. And I see it now with friends that have started that path. They don't know it, and sure, they weren't maybe doing the breathwork stuff, but they took the right amount of LSD to realize it or whatever. But they don't take themselves out of the environment that's holding them back because of fear, essentially. And so they still have the job that requires like 13-hour shifts, right? When they know it's killing them, not just holding them back, they know it's killing them. Like it's going to shorten their lives. And I think getting over that fear, it's because we need to acknowledge like, hey, I need to focus on myself, like hardcore right now. And yeah, sometimes we don't have the money to be able to just quit and like just live. which is then why traveling on a budget, couch surfing, living out of a backpack, being comfortable sleeping outside, if you got to, easy, because you need to focus on yourself. And it's way more important to be able to focus on yourself than whatever else. Like, we're addicted to modern comforts. I was thinking about this earlier today, like how addicted we are to like Airbnbs and stuff and everything being perfect. Like in my day, like if I'm going to go visit someone, I'll sleep on your floor. Now it's like, oh, we're going to go visit wherever. Well, we got to have a room. We got to have our own bathroom. Like, what? Like, but you know, it's like a symptom of this thing, like comfort. It holds us back. And sure, it doesn't mean we have to be uncomfortable our whole lives, but taking a spell to see who you are in the throes of discomfort, I think is really important.
Yeah, but now we have cold showers for that, so
I love cold. Yeah, I mean, my parents just got an ice bath thing,
amazing.
a barrel. So I'm excited for that, but that's only half the picture. I mean, that's great, right?
No,
it's great for your body, your physiology, but it's only half the picture because it doesn't address the psychology, the long-term effects of just learning to be dependent or more autonomous with yourself. And I just wrote a little memoir about it to tweet. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like, especially when you're just hitchhiking randomly with nowhere, you kind of have a vague destination. Like, you know, you're reading a lot, you're writing a lot just to pass the time because you're on the side of the road or you're at a truck stop or whatever. You just have more time to be with yourself. And how much time do we dedicate to be with ourselves these days?
Okay, so how did you get out of that?
So it took a while. From that Mexico trip, long story short, back to San Francisco, I started like selling singing bowls. I would do singing bowl workshops and selling them. Made some decent money. I mean, decent money for me at the time. And ended up going to Nepal. So the singing bowl thing was cool. And then this guy I met in Mexico who had got me into singing bowls, he was like, hey, you want to go to Nepal and help me make content? Because I have this opportunity to do this traditional Tibetan sound healing thing. I think content would be cool. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. He's like, okay, so why don't you do like a GoFundMe or something? See if you can, you know, make some money to do it and I'll pay you some and like, let's figure it out. So I had just started a YouTube channel. Okay, this is how I started to get out. I recognized I needed to have a project. So I had been writing books. I had been like, I'm doing fun stuff, recording an album in New Orleans. Like I'd always been creating, but I didn't have like a project. I didn't have a personal brand, you know. So I started a YouTube channel. I was visiting a friend in Boston. She was in law school. She lived the most boring life ever. And she was the ex-girlfriend of my best friend back in college. And so she had known me for a while. And she was like, your life should be a movie. She's like, there needs to be a documentary on your life. I just don't get how you do it. I don't even understand how you're going to sleep on my couch tonight. Like, it's crazy. So I was like, that's it. I need to document my life. This is the, you know, and everyone had always been saying, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. So I went on with a credit card. I bought a GoPro and I bought a head strap. And I'm like, this is going to be my third eye vision YouTube channel. I'm just going to show what I see with my travels. And it eventually just turned into me documenting other people because that's why I traveled, was other people, the connections I made. And all the feedback was, hey, we want to see more of you. We want to see more of you. But I didn't have the confidence for that. I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about the people because that's what I was about. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a behind the camera type of guy. So I had started the channel. The guy was like, hey, do you want to go to Nepal? Sure. I do the GoFundMe or Indiegogo, and it turns into its own project. And by the end, I was like, hey, man, I'll go to Nepal, but I'm going to do my own project here, and I'll work for you, you know, so you can get what you want to get done, but I'm going to do my own project. So I found a friend from high school. She wanted to quit her job, like kind of what we're talking about. She knew she needed to have a break. So she quit her job and she came with me. We went to Bali first and we documented a bunch of permaculture stuff going on in Bali. and we realized what we were doing. Okay, cool. And we started a second YouTube channel, which was just to be about documenting people's projects. And then we went to Nepal. We started working on the project, and it was cool. It was fun to travel again because I had kind of been in the States for a while. I had been back to New Orleans with the camera for the YouTube channel, and the beginning of that YouTube channel. Probably the best episodes still on that channel are all from New Orleans. All the best content I've ever made. And met a jazz band from Vancouver, and we drove in an unregistered van from New Orleans all the way to Portland, Oregon, and just played jazz music everywhere in all these big cities. It was like a movie. It was like on the road. It was an incredible time. But yeah, I wanted to get out of the country. So ended up in Nepal a few months later. And then we ran out of money. And the project was kind of over. It didn't have a lot of inspiration, like this whole singing bowl thing, because the guy that had originally invited me canceled his trip, by the way. So he never even showed up. And so I was like, what are we going to do? Like, I don't know anyone. Like, how am I going to learn about singing bowls? Like, I promised all these people I was going to make a film or whatever about singing bowl healing. And now, like, you're not even coming. So we figured it out in our own way. We kind of learned that it was all about tourism, that there isn't a lot of traditional anything with singing bowls. It pretty much all started in the 60s when hippies started coming to Nepal, and they like, oh, cool, the chakras. But they don't even have a word in Nepali for singing bowls. They just say singing bowl in English. Like, it's not a thing. It's not a traditional thing. They would have bowls made of the same metals that pregnant women would eat their food from. Or the medicine man of the village would mix the medicine in, because the minerals, normally they're made from 5 to 9 different metals. It's like zinc, iron, tin, bronze, sometimes gold, silver. In my film, that has the list. But when they eat with their hands in Nepal. So a pregnant woman is eating from these bowls, and in their fingernails, the minerals from the metals go in. So it's good for the pregnant women, right? So that was like the most traditional use I could find of singing bowls. And so it's essentially a fairly modern thing to use them. Now, in Hindu culture, they use sound a lot. Like when you're doing your, I guess, puja ceremony, like you hit a bell, like you activate all the senses. You have incense, you have the bell sound, you have this beautiful thing you look at, you touch something, right? So you activate the senses. So that is an element related to their tradition. But so then we go to India. We do another Indiegogo, and we decide to raise money by selling a local guy in Nepal his jewelry, and another guy's things he makes, like shirts and stuff, and an orphanage. They employ local women to make like handicraft stuff. So we made a catalog of things, and we sold it to all our networks in the United States. And we just upped the price, and the extra money we used to go to India, so she could do a teacher training, and I could work on a film about modern or traditional yoga in the modern world. And traditional yoga is more about the mind. It's not like asana, like, poses. It's about controlling the mind, what you eat, what you think, who you spend time with, this kind of thing. So we explored that in like a really, really, really difficult city. I was in a sensitive time of my life, and we were like we lived in the Muslim ghetto of Bangalore, southern India. Bangalore is like the Silicon Valley of India, and it was never built to be such a big city. So like traffic is bad. It's just chaos. And there we are in this second story apartment. Just all day, you just hear honks, you hear dogs, you hear people, it's India. And yeah, so we were there for a few months, and I had some friends from New Orleans come visit, and we had our own little Mardi Gras celebration because it was Mardi Gras season. And I wasn't really drinking on this trip. We drank once or twice, and it was just kind of bad. And so I wasn't really drinking. It was the beginning of like my sober years, pretty much. And so I was like coming out of it, right? Then my travel partner went home, and I went back to Nepal in March 2015. The earthquake hit a month later. So I was like getting all the things and sending them to California, the things that people bought. And then the earthquake hit. And it was a really intense earthquake. I had the camera rolling. We were jamming. I had my GoPro on and I uploaded the video and it went viral. So I had this attention going on. And I ended up joining a bunch of expats, tourists, whatever, that had been raising money online to buy food, buy supplies, and then drive out to the countryside to deliver everything to all these people that lost everything because the government wasn't getting anything done and it was still early. And a lot of these roads you can't even like drive on. Like a big truck can't even get on these roads to deliver supplies. So we were renting Jeeps and I was like, hey, do you need someone to come along as videographer? He's like, yes. So I came along and I documented all as videographer. And the end of the film just kind of became this idea, like the film became about how we use singing bowls they come from the earth, right? These metals, and we use them to kind of connect with one another, to heal. And then as soon as the earth decides to shake, then we all have to come together as community. We all come together to help one another. And so it was the film just kind of it explores our connection with the earth and our different ways how we explore that. I guess that's how I would say it. But the interesting part of the story is once that was all done, I went to Vietnam to visit an old friend from college and from the Bangkok days. He wanted to work on this website or whatever. He's like, hey, this could be a good opportunity to hang out. Why don't I fly you over? You help me make this website. Yeah. And it was a long, long trip. I don't know if you've ever traveled through Asia, Southeast Asia and stuff, but a lot of times, like to get from Nepal to Vietnam, I had to first go to Malaysia and then have like a 8-hour layover. And then from Malaysia to Vietnam, like that was the only way to get there or whatever. And while in Nepal, there's a drug called modafinil, which is a lot like Adderall. And modafinil they give to people that I guess work late night shifts so they don't fall asleep. It's very similar to Adderall. It's basically amphetamine. And at the time, I wasn't doing anything like that because, I was just growing out of it. But, when I was living in Thailand, even when I was in Mexico, I would take little bits of Adderall so I could write all day because I would just like to do that. So I was like, hey, I have an 8-hour layover. I'm just going to bring a little bit so I can write at the airport and stuff. And so I'm drinking coffee. I'm taking this modafinil, and then it felt really strong. And so I took a little bit of Xanax to calm down. And that's how it started. And I'm still at the airport, and I'm writing, I'm editing videos. And then I show up to the airport in Vietnam, and my friend has like a 6-pack. And I was like, all right, I guess we're drinking. I haven't really drank in a while, but let's do it. And I had been living in the Himalayas, the foothills of the Himalayas, smoking Nepali hashish every day, doing yoga, really doing some deep inner work, right, with myself, living in nature. So I was really connected, like I talked about earlier. I had a lot of life force going through me. Introduce these drugs, introduce some beer, then we go to another bar, then another bar. I'm drinking beer after beer, a little bit of vodka. Then by the final bar, we're by the beach and they pass around like a bamboo bong and we're smoking some shitty weed. And I'm just, gone, but you don't know it when you're on amphetamines because you're still fine. So I went to bed that night and I woke up in the middle of the night hearing a woman scream. And I didn't know where I was. And it was my friend's mom, and I was in her room, and I immediately put my hand over my heart, said, sorry, I'm looking for the bathroom. And I ran out, and I found the bathroom, and I went back to bed. The next morning, my friend wakes me up, he goes, hey, man, what happened last night? I was like, I don't know. I was looking for the bathroom, I think, and I ended up in your mom's room. So I went to the bathroom, and he's like, is that all? I'm like, that's all I remember. And so he's like, okay, well, she's pretty freaked out. I think we better take you to a hotel. So we go, takes me to a hotel, checks me in. I pop a Xanax because I'm fucked, and I fall back asleep. Later that afternoon, he comes back. He's like, hey, dude, you're never going to believe what happened last night. I was like, do I want to even hear it? I was like, I was pretty fucked up. And he's like, well, you told me that you were wandering looking for the bathroom or whatever, and then my mom was yelling, screaming, and then you you ran out. You said, I'm looking for the bathroom, you ran out. And she told me that she was sleeping, and suddenly there was this man, a demon, and his mom is Chinese, right? So they have a different kind of just like mythology than we have angels and Catholicism, and they have just different they have different things, different deities. So there was this demon over going like circling around her bed, going like all around and not letting her get out. And to her story, even like almost hitting her, like kind of almost violently, but not quite. And I was like, oh my God, does she think, was that me? And he's like, I kept saying to her, like, so it was Jordan. And she was like, no, it was a demon. It was a demon with a smile from ear to ear, like a Joker, right? And like this gray hair and golden skin or something. And like, rah, rah, rah. And worst fear of her life, right? Like a haunting. And then immediately in the same, this is why he, still, I guess, trusts me as a person, because he suddenly, she said, and then suddenly, whoosh, it was Jordan putting his hand on his heart, freaking out, saying, oh my God, I'm sorry, where's the bathroom? And I ran out. And I gave him the same story, and our stories aligned. As soon as she recognized me, I was like, come on, dude. Like, it was me. It wasn't a fucking ghost or whatever. And he's like, believe me, I'm the most material guy on the planet. I don't believe in that shit, but it's my mom. And she's saying it wasn't you. She's saying it was a demon. So apparently I was possessed by a demon, and I haunted his mother. All of this, in my opinion, because of all the drugs, the alcohol, the weed leading up to that. And then I was sleepwalking. And so in her culture, maybe not so much her culture, but in Nepali culture, I went back to Nepal after to kind of process through it. And they were like, oh, congratulations. I'm like, what are you talking about? I go, you were chosen to help her. I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't help her. I scared her. Like, I haunted her. Like, they're like, no, you were chosen by the spirits, because when people are haunted by a demon, they need to learn something. And that's what they're there to learn. And so all my Nepali friends were telling me that. And I told my mom that. And she's like, yeah, I mean, that's how I kind of see that thing too. It's like sometimes we carry these ghosts with us, and they're so internal. It's like trauma or whatever, that sometimes it takes something really intense to bring it to our attention. And it's almost like we create it. And so in her head, whether it was a dream, a night terror, or her seeing things, she created this haunting. She saw the demon that has been haunting her, and it manifested through me because I had left the keys in the car, as it were, with all my debauchery. And so it was really intense. And we spent the week together. Everything was fine. She's still like, she wasn't like, I guess, scared of me or anything. She wasn't like trying to avoid me. And I gave her a big hug. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this. Like, and it was like it was the most intense experience of my life, because I felt violated in a way, but I also felt responsible, because here I was years after, like a year or two or three after all my like worst partying. And there I was, super irresponsible. And look what happened. Like something really crazy happened. And so, like I said, going back to when I was first doing this prana work and doing those meditations, and then deciding to party, and then manifesting crazy women into my life, telling me they have my child. Or now it's like I evolved in my whatever spiritual journey so far, that the next step is like I'm manifesting fucking spirits that come after people when I'm not responsible. And now, sure, maybe some people can look at that in a positive light, but I was like, I don't want to be that person. I want to be that person in a loving way where people like feel good about it. I don't want to be that. And so pieces started to click. Like with all the girls I'd ever dated, like seriously, like it was always like I was there to like be the asshole that taught them a lesson. And so fortunately, I had been around women that like could recognize something like that. Like, hey, he just represents something in my past that I haven't processed, and like, you know, I needed this, but see you later, Jordan. I don't want to be with you. But I had always kind of like been this whatever archetype, this catalyst of teaching people shit in ways they don't want to hear it. And sometimes I knew it and I was like very direct about it, but not in a loving way. And then this happened and I was like, this is the end. I don't want this anymore. I want to help and support people in their growth and their healing, but I don't want it to be in this ugly, ugly way. And so I haven't taken any pills or any drugs like that since then. That was the end. And I stopped drinking after that. And I took a few years off alcohol. There was a phase the next year when I was in Ireland, but it just got me depressed and I was sad. But I took alcohol. I was done with for a few years after that. And to wrap it all up, then I just got grounded in the whole process. I kind of came into who I am as I had kids. And now I just see alcohol for what it is. It's fun once in a while, but like it just is a waste of energy. Like it steals all my energy that I need to be putting towards other more important things. Yeah. And the I guess that life force energy from all the breath work and stuff, the Kundalini is just alive now. And it's not going anywhere. It's here. I prioritized it when it needed to be prioritized, and now it's always here with me. It's no longer a curse. It's just life. Life is always a process. Life is always a journey. That's not going to change. And I'm just moving forward.
So how long ago was that experience in Vietnam?
That was 2015. There's obviously a lot more. What?
Really? When was New Orleans? I thought New Orleans was like 2015 or later, because you were like, we've got 6 years to go.
Well, six years until 2020, which is when I stopped traveling that lifestyle. So I first went to New Orleans in 2013. And then I went again in 2014. 2013 was also Mexico. 2014 was Nepal, India, and then Bali. 2015 was Nepal, Vietnam, and India. And then I came back. I mean, there's way more of the story, but I feel like we've been going on for hours now. We're going to have a part 3.
Honestly, we are, because we haven't talked about ayahuasca or homesteading or Hawaii. And now I'm like, okay, this makes sense because we still have... Wow, I thought this was like 6 years or something we were covering then, but that was just like 2 years.
We just finished 2015. I can sum up 2016 pretty quick. Ayahuasca is 2018. So I don't know if we can get all the way to ayahuasca today.
No, I feel like this is good. It's like, okay, the first part 1 was like you growing up, like this religious family, like being around people who thought masturbating was like the biggest sin, like innocent Jordan stuff. And then part 2 is like this hedonistic phase. And then we can have part 3, which is going to be like, you know, the spiritual enlightenment bit. I mean, just, you know, the upward journey.
Yeah. So we did go into some of the hedonism, I think, the partying and last time, like in Thailand, which, by the way, I have a book about Thailand. It's on, you can go to my website. It's called The Ex-Backpackers of Bangkok. It's like $12. It's the only book I've officially released. And I did that for myself because it's pretty vulnerable. It's pretty open and transparent. And some of it was kind of hard to write about. But if anyone is interested in learning more about that kind of thing, yeah, jordanurbs.com. Shameless plug for anyone still listening.
Nice. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and like I said, so that was 2015, and then by 2016, I was getting into my like I got vegan again. I mean, I had already been kind of vegan since the Mexico thing, but I was like, I got super yogi, super vegan, no alcohol. Like I was very like, I don't want to say pure because I wasn't pure. Like my body was very like easily influenced, I guess. Like when you're not eating a lot of meat and you're eating clean and you're smoking weed and you're doing yoga all the time, like you're really sensitive. You're just really sensitive. And at the time, I thought that was like the utmost. Like, oh, that's how we need to be. That's how we are. That's how we can play with these higher energies and really get stuff done in life. And maybe that's true to an extent, but I could never handle that sensitivity. And I started learning that starting in 2016. And I guess that's where we can pick up next time. And that's where, yeah, I mean, that'll be a smooth segue into ayahuasca and, yeah, the present day.
Okay. Amazing. Any last... Well, I asked you one question last time out of the 3 that I usually ask at the end. So maybe I'll ask you the next one, which is there a book that's had a big influence on your life?
I mean, On the Road by Jack Kerouac, I would say inspired a good era of my life. Bukowski, almost any of Bukowski's work on when he was just kind of like a bum, alcoholic, trying to be a writer. And I mean, I read so many books, it's hard to say. I read a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, for sake of the stories I've already told, yeah, I would say On the Road by Jack Kerouac left a big mark.
What am I going to call this episode?
I don't know. We had all that bit in the beginning about the politics and stuff too, so it's like you can't count that out. That's another interesting journey. I mean, like politics. Like I lived so far away from everything. Like I didn't follow anything. Like I did in college because I was learning about the world and realizing how fucked up everything was. And like that was around when like Ron Paul was still around. We're like, yeah, like they're you know. But then I just detached, you know. I didn't watch anything. I didn't, I wasn't on social media. I posted things on Facebook once in a while, but like I was just in my own world, completely disconnected. And it was around when Trump, yeah, it was 2016. And I was like, someone told me like, oh yeah, Donald Trump is running for president. I'm like, Donald Trump, how do I know that guy? And oh yeah, it's Donald Trump. And then like when he actually won, that's when I started paying attention again to the world, because I'd always like Hillary Clinton was the embodiment of the establishment. I knew that. And I was really disenfranchised with Obama. I voted for Obama because I thought there would be a change, and there wasn't. It was all the same, just packaged differently. Yeah. And then Trump came in and I started paying attention to the world again. And I just recognized like, I always question, like, do we need to pay attention, or do we need to pay attention to what's in front of us in real life and just be present? How important is this bigger picture stuff? And how much of it is just distracting and twisting our perception? So we're always in a constant state of anxiety or fear, so we can't just perceive our true potential.
Mm. Yeah, well, I definitely noticed that when I moved to the US, because I wasn't paying attention to anything in Australia. And then in the US, it's like you can't not, because it's so exciting. It's like reality TV. Yeah, I was there when Trump was elected, and it was like, oh my God, you can't not be like tuned into it. But it kind of is in a way that is, yeah, there's other stuff going on, right? And it's even, beyond just like media trying to sell you, or, CNN and Fox just being businesses. It's like something beyond that. But now I think it's important, I don't know, to work out your values yourself just by living. So it's not, because when you're just like in the world, it's not like you're not paying attention. It's like you're paying attention to like what's important. And then when something happens, like at the start, we're talking about socialism or whatever, like when something happens where you see this doesn't make sense, like people aren't happy, people aren't working, people are poor, there's like this welfare thing going on or something. And then you realize like, okay, this doesn't help people, but like this other leader like potentially has something or whatever it is that you might notice in your area. But yeah, the whole global thing, when stuff just becomes global issues, which I think is happening a lot, like people borrow stuff from the US, like stuff that happens in the US is very specific, like the race relations and all of that is like doesn't necessarily apply to other places. Like other places have their own issues, but then people just kind of like get really riled up about stuff that's like, hang on, this isn't even, I mean, for example, like the police shootings and stuff, it's like in the UK, police don't have guns, like literally. They're not armed, but it's like people then kind of like latch on to stuff, which is all, anyway. I don't know. It's like a whole nother topic. But I don't think it's also like being aware of the emotions triggered by, you know, because if we're trapped in cycles of outrage or whatever, it's a distraction.
Yeah. And then just trapped in, it goes so deep because there's, you know, whatever they call it, controlled opposition too, and like where you think you're thinking outside of the box, but you're really just in the next box that they lay out for you. And it goes deep. I mean, World War III is already happening. And the battlefield is our minds. There's plenty of real life war zones out there, and it really sucks for the people that have to be there. But the real war is happening in our minds, and it's been happening since 2020. And we've won some battles and we've lost some battles, and we're going to see what the outcomes are. But it's all happening in our minds. And it's just a question of how many of us wake up to it to stop it. And I think things are so fucking crazy in clown world right now that a lot of people are waking up to it. But is it enough? I don't know. Guess we're going to see what happens.
Yeah. Let's see. So on that happy note, thanks for coming on. And I'm excited for part 3. Any final plugs or anything?
I'm getting ready to release my course on it's a coaching program, but it's also a course if you don't want to deal with me. But it's basically everything you need to become a video creator. And it's incorporating a lot of what I've learned. The reason I'm even plugging it is because all the things I've been learning on my journey, traveling and stuff, a lot of it does go into video creation. And a lot of it has to do with authenticity and vulnerability and opening up to yourself, getting past that resistance and that fear of just doing it. And so that's all part of the course. And so I'm gearing up to launch that in a few weeks here. So find me on Twitter or whatever to hear more about that, or go to my website if that's of interest to you. And I always like meeting new people, especially if you're familiar with some of my stories. So feel free to drop me a line. I love meeting new people. That's why I've been loving Twitter and X this year, is because I've met so many people and I haven't been able to travel like I used to. So it's like I'm still able to meet all these new people from around the world, and I'm not even couch surfing. So
amazing.
All about it.
Yeah, I interviewed Tommy and he was like, oh yeah, you spoke to Jordan. He's one of my ex-friends. And I was like, what? Like, you're not friends anymore? And then it's like, no, Twitter friends. Got it.
Tommy Christie?
Yeah.
Oh, did you have him on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. I got to hear that one. Yeah, he's in Argentina right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Good
Thanks,
chatting.
Delia. Yeah, good to see you. We'll do this again soon. We got to just have a series.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share it with someone. And also, a random 23-year-old just messaged me on Instagram and told me he found the podcast through the algorithm. So it actually does help if you review the podcast and subscribe or follow. And then you get to find out about future episodes as well.